Welcome to Small, Simple, Profitable. The goal of this series is to equip you to start and run small businesses that are quickly profitable and simple to manage, whether you're doing business in your own country or in other countries. My name is Bob Goldman. I've been an entrepreneur for more than 20 years in the United States, India, and the Middle East. I look forward to sharing what I've learned with you. Let's start by focusing on how to design a small business startup that is rapidly profitable. I've just used three terms that need a little explanation. I use the term startup because the focus here is on the process of starting a new business. In future episodes, I will look at how to redesign an existing business to make a profit. But this episode focuses on how to start new businesses that make a profit. I use the term rapidly profitable because I think you should design your business to make a small profit in its very first year. There are good habits to get into when you plan a new business that will make it easier to make a small profit right away. We will talk about those good habits in this episode. I use the word designing because there are specific design choices that you need to make if you want your new business to make a profit right away. In this episode, we will look at the three keys to designing a rapidly profitable startup, which to me means designing a business to make a small profit in its first year. We will look at the secret to becoming confident that you've actually designed a new business idea that can make a profit right away. And we'll look at 4 reasons why trying to make a small profit in the first year of your startup is a really good idea. Let's start by looking at the 3 keys to designing a new business to make a profit right away. First, let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I attended an international conference on small businesses in other countries. One of the companies that had a booth at the conference was well known for investing in small businesses in other countries. When I stopped by their booth, the gentleman sitting at the booth wasn't particularly talkative, probably because his leg was in a cast and he was sitting down. I tried to start a conversation with him, but I wasn't getting very far, so I decided to make a bold statement to see if I could provoke a reaction from him. I told him, when I advise others in starting small businesses, I tell them there are 2 keys to becoming rapidly profitable. Then I stopped and waited to see if he had any response, but he just looked at me. So I continued. I tell them that the 2 keys to being rapidly profitable are first, to keep their startup expenses really low, and second, to sign up actual customers before launching their business. At first, he didn't say anything. He gathered his crutches and he got out of his chair. I really wasn't sure what was going to happen. When he was finally standing upright, he reached out his hand to shake mine, and he said, "Congratulations, you're the first person in 20 years to say it correctly." And I thought, wow, I'd better write that down so I can remember it for later. After that conversation, I got to thinking, and I realized that there were actually 3 keys, but one of the keys was assumed underneath the other 2 keys. So I will start with that first foundational key, and then I'll go to the other 2 keys that I talked with this gentleman about. The first step in planning a business startup that can quickly make a profit is designing the business itself. Now, of course, when you start a business, you have to develop the products and services that your business will offer. But you also have to design the business itself. This is the difference between working on the business and working in the business. Designing a viable business model is working on the business. You want to design your business model so that it's attractive to customers and profitable to you. Let's look at the 4 components of this business model. The first component of a good business model is identifying the customers for the products and services you plan to offer. Paying customers are the lifeblood of any business. Potential customers must want what you're offering, and they must be willing to pay for it. If they won't pay for your products and services, they aren't actually customers. So, in developing your business model, you first need to find customers with problems they would pay to solve. The second component of a good business model is developing solutions to those customer problems. These are the products and the services that you plan to sell customers in order to help them. Your products and services have to feel like solutions to your customers, otherwise they won't want them. Remember that your potential customers usually have several options for solving a particular problem, and one option is just to ignore the problem. We all do that. If something is too much of a hassle or if it costs too much, it's just not worth it. I think we all see lots of ads by technology companies for things we don't need. This leads me to my third point, which is that you'll need to convince customers to pay for your solution. It does you no good to correctly identify customer needs, which is number one, and then develop a great solution that would really help them, which is number two, if you can't actually persuade them to buy it. You need to somehow be persuasive in convincing customers to buy. Now, persuasive invitations can take many forms and should be adapted to different customers, but there's no formula that's guaranteed to work. My advice for now is to test out several brief invitations to see which ones will persuade potential customers. If you can't convince someone in 3 or 4 sentences, then 3 or 4 paragraphs probably won't work either. If your invitation isn't working, then either you need a better sales invitation, or you might need a better solution, or maybe you're not talking to the right potential customers. Have you heard the saying that a good product sells itself? It's not entirely true, but there is some truth in that saying. It's hard to sell a bad product to people who don't want it. There's no sales presentation that's good enough for that problem. It's much better to try to sell a really good product to people who really want it. That's why components 1 and 2 are extremely important to component 3. Before you try to develop your persuasive invitations, make sure you've correctly identified customers with problems they want to solve, and make sure you developed a good solution that will really help them. The final component of a good business model is choosing the right pricing for what you're selling. If you charge too much, you may drive away your potential customers. But if you charge too little, you may lose money with every sale. For your business to work, you have to charge enough for your services to cover your costs with a realistic number of customers so that you can make a small profit. Now, the first 3 components combine to make a business model that's attractive to your customers. It's attractive to them because you have customers who are eager to buy, great solutions to offer them, and some way to convince them to buy. But that by itself is not enough to make a viable business model. You also need the business model to be profitable. You have to get your pricing and your costs right so that you can make a small profit. Let me illustrate the difference between attractive to customers and profitable for you using a very simple taxi cab illustration. Suppose you want to start a taxi cab service that takes people from your neighborhood to the nearest airport. Let's skip over the regulations for now and just focus on the pricing. If a normal taxi ride to the airport from your neighborhood is $30 and you offer to do it for only $5, you're probably going to get a lot of customers. And those customers will be excited about your service and they'll promise to use you every time they need to go to the airport. The problem is, charging $5 for a ride to the airport from your neighborhood won't be enough to cover the cost of gas, maintaining your car, paying insurance, paying the driver. Even if you're the driver, you shouldn't work for free, so you need to pay the driver. That means that you're going to lose money every time you drive someone to the airport for $5. Now, if you raise your rates to $30 so that you can cover your expenses and make a small profit, you will probably lose most of your $5 customers. The $5 taxi ride is attractive to customers, but but it isn't profitable for you. The $30 taxi ride is profitable for you, but it might not be as attractive to customers. So in summary, the first key to rapid profitability in a business startup is developing a business model that has all four components so that this business is attractive to customers and profitable for you. The second key to designing a business startup that can quickly make a small profit is this: keep your startup expenses as low as possible. There are three concepts that we need to define before we can truly understand what kind of startup expenses to keep low and why it makes such a difference. These concepts are fixed expenses, variable expenses, and profit. Now, fixed expenses stay the same regardless of your workload or the number of customers. Take the example of a business startup that signs a year-long lease for office space and hires 1 or 2 full-time employees. Those are expenses that will stay the same regardless of whether there are no customers or many customers. Variable expenses, on the other hand, only occur if you have a sale or you're serving a customer. A simple example of this is paying a part-time employee only when they're meeting with a paying customer. Language lessons are one example of this. If you only pay a language tutor when they're actually meeting with a paying customer, then you've structured their salary to be a variable expense. The more hours they spend with customers, the more you'll need to pay that employee. But if your customers cancel all their hours, you won't need to pay that employee at all. And that's the purest example of a variable expense. Another example of a variable expense is renting office space only when you need it instead of on a fixed lease. Here's an example to illustrate the difference between fixed expenses and variable expenses in a startup. Suppose your business is offering computer software training to customers. If you rent an office space with a training room on a fixed annual lease, that's a fixed expense. If you rent a hotel conference room only when you're delivering training, that's a variable expense. The more training events you sell, the more times you'll have to rent that hotel conference room. But if you can't convince anyone to take your training, you can cancel the hotel reservation and you won't need to spend any money. In a similar way, you can treat your software trainer as a fixed expense or as a variable expense. If you hire them as a full-time employee, you'll have to pay them whether or not you have customers. But if you pay them only when they deliver a training, then their salary becomes a variable expense. You'll probably have to pay that trainer more per day if you're only paying them several days a month, but at least you can cancel that expense if you have no customers. Now, if you know you have a steady supply of customers that are coming, then it probably makes sense to hire that person full-time so that your average cost per training session goes down. Business startups will have both fixed expenses and variable expenses, and it's important to know the difference. The next concept we need to discuss is profit. When your income covers all your expenses and leaves you with a little extra, what's left over is called profit. For now, I'm not going into the details of what's considered allowable income and what's considered allowable expenses. The main idea here is that profit is what happens when you add up all your income, subtract all your expenses, and hopefully have a little bit left over. Let's compare two examples with different amounts of income and expenses. In option A, you have $101 of income and $100 of expenses, which leaves you with $1 of profit. In option B, you have $10,001 of income, $10,000 of expenses, and you still have $1 of profit. You can see that both examples have the same amount of profit, $1. Option B has $10,000 of expenses, so you'll need more than $10,000 of income just to make $1 of profit. When you have lower startup expenses, your path to making a small profit is easier, and your risk of losing money is lower. If you want to make a profit in the first year of your business, option A is easier and safer than option B. Now, there's no magic formula about how little or how much to spend when you're starting a new business. The main idea I want you to catch is that spending less at first makes it easier to make a profit. So be creative about how to minimize your expenses when you're getting started. And when customers start paying you, use their money to increase your expenses. That's the idea of having a customer-funded startup. Instead of borrowing money or getting investor money, try to use customer money to fund your startup. Now, one question that comes up regularly is this: what about needing a nice office space? Some cultures expect it, and some regulations will require it. So what are your options? A common pattern that I've seen in people starting small businesses is that they sometimes overspend on their office in order to impress others. Let me tell you a story from my days when I was starting a language business in India. I was out with an Indian realtor looking for an apartment for some new customers to live in. He was curious about my business, so he asked me if I had an office. I said enthusiastically, "No, I don't." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because I'm trying to make a profit. If I rent an office, all my profits will go to my landlord." He said, "That's a good point. I don't have an office either." What I learned was he expected me to have a nice office, even though he was working from home. Now, we did rent an office space a few months later, but that was after we had enough customer income to be able to pay the rent. This story illustrates that some people may expect you to have a really nice office space. I have found, though, that you can reset their expectations by talking like a legitimate business person. There's no right answer about whether you should rent an office space when you're starting your business. My advice is to be as creative as possible at the very beginning when you're just getting started. Try to avoid the initial expense of an office and either work from home or borrow a space for a while at least if you can. Once you have customer income coming in, that's a different story. If you can wait until you use customer money to pay for your office, you will probably be profitable right away. Let's review the main idea in this profitability key, which is to keep your startup expenses as low as possible if you want to be quickly profitable. The key to low startup expenses is to minimize your fixed expenses and use as many variable expenses as possible to give yourself an easier path to make a small profit. The third key to designing a business startup that will quickly make a profit is sign up some customers before you launch the business. Now, what do I mean by that? I thought you had to start your business first before you could start attracting customers. Let's look at the importance of customers to your business and what it means to get some of them to sign up before you launch. Probably the single most important concept for an entrepreneur to understand is that paying customers are the lifeblood of your business. If you have paying customers, your business has a chance. If you have no customers, you have no business. So the sooner you can get customers to commit to your business, the better. The problem for a new business is that you're unknown and therefore risky for potential customers. It's much harder to convince your first few customers than convincing them after you've been a successful business for many years. The solution to this dilemma is to look for early adopters who are eager for the solution you're planning to offer. Early adopters are more likely to sign up early because they're excited about what you're offering. They're more likely to forgive your early mistakes and imperfections which you're going to make. They'll provide you with some of the initial income that you need to cover your expenses, and hopefully they'll help you get other customers by telling their friends. What are some of the ways of doing this when you don't have a formal entity that can receive income? Let's use the example of offering software training to make this easier to understand. You can accept cash payment for your training and record it as income after your business is properly registered. Or you could offer your training and bill them later. Another idea is offer your training under the label of another business that is properly registered. Another idea is to trade for services instead of payment. For example, you can have my training in exchange for free meals or fixing my plumbing. Another idea is to accept deposits to reserve a spot in a future training. You could also just accept sign-ups, but sign-ups without any payment are not as real because they can cancel without penalty. The point here is to see if real customers will actually pay for your services by using creative payment ideas before your business is actually launched. The more paying customers you can sign up before you officially launch your business, the more confidence you'll have that you've successfully designed a viable business model. Pre-selling is the key to confidence in your business model. Let's review the 3 keys to a rapidly profitable business startup. The first key is to develop a viable business model because you need a comprehensive approach to finding eager customers who really want your solutions and are willing to pay enough for them that you can make a small profit. Those are the components of a viable business model. The second key is to keep your startup expenses as low as possible, especially your fixed expenses, because this gives you an easier path to covering your expenses and making a small profit. The third key is to sign up some customers before you launch, because the more paying customers you find when you're still experimenting with your business model, the more likely you are to have real customers when you actually start your business. Now let's look at 4 reasons you should pursue rapid profitability if you're an entrepreneur planning a startup. The first benefit of pursuing rapid profitability is that it will make you a better entrepreneur. Now, how will it do that? First, trying to make a small profit as quickly as possible will force you to focus on customers and profit instead of all the other distractions in starting a business. Second, it will force you to keep revising your plan until you have the 4 components that will make your business attractive to customers and profitable to you. Third, it will force you to focus on finding actual paying customers right away. If you focus on these good habits right away, you'll be a better entrepreneur. The second benefit of being rapidly profitable is that it will give you control over the hours that you work. Now, how will it do that? Well, the sooner you're profitable, the sooner you will know how many hours you need to work to maintain an acceptable level of profitability. The sooner you're profitable, the sooner you will understand what actually affects your profitability, which means you'll know how to prioritize your time. When you know how to increase your profit, you can decide how much you want to work. The third benefit is that it will give you confidence to take risks as you develop your business. There are at least 3 types of business risk that you may want to consider. The first risk area is that you may want to take the risk of doing business in another country. If you are thinking about doing a small business in another country, be aware that foreigners in other countries always have fewer rights and fewer protections than citizens. Foreigners need residency visas just to work in another country. If a hostile official simply denies the renewal of your residency visa, you will be quickly out of the country, often without knowing the real reason your visa was denied. If you think you might lose a lot of money, you may want to be careful about starting an uncertain business in another country. But if you know how to quickly make a profit in a new business, it's not as scary to think about starting a business in another country. And a profitable business is easily transferable to someone else if something bad does happen. The second risk area you may consider is taking your business into a new market or a new location. If you don't know how to make a profit, this will be much riskier. But if you do know how to make sure your business makes a profit, it won't be as scary to think about taking your business into a new market or a new location. The third risk area is that you may want to be spiritually open in your business. Obviously, I would strongly encourage you to do so. However, there's always the risk of hostility and persecution. If you think you might lose a lot of money, you should probably be careful about how you risk your business. But if you're already profitable, it's not as scary to think about being open about your spiritual values and beliefs, even if it means risking your business. The bottom line is this: if you know how to make a profit, you will find it easier to take the risk of entering a new country, or exploring a new market, or being spiritually open. The fourth benefit is that it will make your business easier to transition to others when it's time to move on. No one wants to buy a business that's consistently losing money, but a healthy business with a steady stream of customers, trained and motivated employees, and consistent profits is much more attractive. Let's review what we discussed in this episode. What are the keys to designing a rapidly profitable startup? I'm going to present this summary in reverse order, beginning with the benefits and then connecting those benefits to the 3 keys that will get you there. If you want to be a better entrepreneur, have more control over the hours that you work, have the confidence to take risks that others might not approve of, and make your business easier to transition to others when it's time to move on, then choose the path of launching and operating your own small business and prioritize becoming profitable as quickly as possible by first developing a business model that combines eager customers, attractive solutions, persuasive invitations, and realistic prices. Secondly, keeping your startup expenses as low as possible, especially your fixed expenses. And thirdly, signing up real customers while you're still exploring whether your business will work. I hope this episode has inspired you to believe that you could design a new business with the potential to quickly make a profit. I believe you will be a more confident entrepreneur if you have knowledge and skills to do it well. And that's the focus of these small, simple, profitable episodes. In future episodes, I will explore how to design a business startup that will probably fail, so that you'll see some common mistakes you'll want to avoid, how to design a business startup that will probably last by identifying some of the keys that will increase your business stability and longevity, and practical tools to help you plan your business startup and make wise decisions along the way. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
We'd like to thank the Center for Integrated Business for sponsoring this series. The Center for Integrated Business provides practical equipping for starting and running small businesses that are rapidly profitable and spiritually positive. They offer a variety of online courses that are practical and low cost, with content that's easy to understand and apply. You can learn more about the Center for Integrated Business at c4ib.com. That's C, the number 4, IB.com.